and welcome to this episode of Everyday Enchantment. I am your host, Stacey and Andon, and today I have one of my most favorite people. I'm probably the favoritist, although just don't tell my husband that. Uh, person on the planet, Adrienne Enns. So we are going to talk about so many juicy things I know today. I'm already excited before I even hit the record button to introduce you to Adrienne. She is the badass owner of May You Know Joy, which is all about helping us be more intentional about creating joy in our lives. And I'll let Adrienne share a little bit more about her story if she wants to tell us how she came into this work in the world. And you're also a master coach too. I'll just throw that out there because you are. And
we didn't talk about that.
Just an extraordinary voice. You're a speaker. You do so many things out in the world to help people remember, kind of come back to the simplicity of joy. Now, maybe not always easy, and we're going to talk about that today, but how do we make it more simple? And how do we really, again, kind of remove some of the obstacles? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we can actually feel amazing more often than not. Adrienne has an incredible product line, which if you have ever come to any of my events or you've done anything with me locally, you have been the recipient of these incredible card products. And I can't say enough because they've changed my life. So it would seem like just pulling a card doesn't seem like it would, make such a big deal. I could not say more about how the more we can simplify the ways to connect with our own intuition, the universe, God, spirit, just how we want to be. Like a card pull is such a beautiful way to do it. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Adrienne, and let you fill in any of my gaps.
I love it. Should we do a quick card pull just to see?
Yes.
What? I got them right here.
Absolutely.
Let's pull them up.
Which deck do you have?
I have the May You Know Joy deck, the original one.
Love.
Sorry, this has a sticker on it with the book.
Yep.
Oh, how perfect is this for us today?
Perfect. Yeah. Especially because I've just been a little bit all over the place with world events. So coming back to peace just feels like a beautiful reminder.
Yes. So I just first of all, I'm so thrilled to be here. And that was a really gorgeous introduction. And we can dive into, there's so many deep ends of this pool that we could dive into. But yeah, for people who are not familiar with my work, this year have the incredible pleasure of celebrating 10 years sober. So that's a lot of joy. Absolutely. And that's really what inspired what my daily practice is, and then the work that comes out of that. So I realized, not in one moment, but just at some point, how much energy I had put into my own self-destruction, numbing out, covering it up. It takes a lot of work, which is not well placed. And so, I started asking myself, what would happen if I use this energy for good? Do you know what I mean? What are all these simple choices that I could start making that feel like, and I didn't love myself at that point, but felt a little closer to loving myself, being kind, being nourishing, caring for myself, showing up in the world in a way that felt true to me. So fast forward to the cards. That's why I love creating them and sharing them, is because I think we all need, and I use them every day. This journey doesn't end, but these very simple nudges to bring us back to ourselves and make us even be curious or ask questions or be more mindful. So it's very much not about being perfect, but being aware and making choices. And then to circle back to the original part is I just realized if I'm going to all of this trouble to turn my life around, then I do want to be happy, as much as possible. So that's the other part. Doesn't mean I'm happy all the time, but I do try to make choices that align me to that joy. So that might mean talking to you, you know, or taking a nap or having a cry. Like, so it's not always
Mhm.
being happy, but moving towards it in a mindful way.
And that's such an important part too, because again, when we, and I've numbed out in so many ways in my own life, when we start to kind of strip that away and put that energy into feeling more joy, feeling more happiness, that can be overwhelming too. Like we can absolutely run into some obstacles
Yeah.
in terms of, we think I say this all the time. We think we really want to be like 100 million% joyful. And then it shows up as we start to create it. And then we can get a little sideways with it too.
Well, yeah, like, and so, I mean, I've encountered it myself and
Mhm.
continue to do so daily, but also like in talking to so many people, specifically women over the years, there are like a number of obstacles, one being the one you just described. So, we're on this hamster wheel, we're busy, we're doing things for other people, and we want free time, We
Yeah,
just
I
want
mean, and again, summer is upon us.
summer,
I
yes,
want the
want
most
to,
free
like, be
time.
outside, but then it's so interesting because so many times I've talked to people and they get this free time and
Mhm.
they absolutely don't know what to do, and
Yeah,
it's very normal, like, we get
that's a really
very
good point.
disconnected from ourselves and what makes
Mhm.
us happy. So I know you've been doing all this amazing work around this. It's like experimenting,
Yeah.
and just being curious, like, okay, yoga makes other people happy. Maybe it makes you happy, maybe it doesn't, like
Mhm.
really just testing it out and being honest with yourself and keeping what works and leaving
Absolutely.
the rest. And then also just like super simple things. So it doesn't have to be a big like excursion from your normal day. Those are awesome, but like what music makes you happy? What people make you happy? What environments make you happy? What colors make you happy? Like, can you
Mhm.
weave this in? And then you kind of touched on it. The other part then is like allowing ourselves to feel it. Like, it sounds a little crazy, but like if we're not used to it, that feeling can also be a little overwhelming. So like if you think about your heart like this, like even if you just open to it a little bit, you're like,
Like 3% more or 5%
yeah,
more, right? Like,
because it
if
can
you're a
be
math person
overwhelming or
listening.
you might not feel worth it or feel used to it or
Yeah.
all kinds of things. So just like, and how does it feel? Like for me, my stomach relaxes, my heart might
Mm.
feel more open, my
Mhm.
shoulders drop, I smile, but it could
Mhm.
be different for everybody. It's like noticing those sensations of like,
Yeah.
I'm feeling good and then savoring it, right? Like, wow, this is
Yes.
what joy feels like for me.
That's a really good point, even just tagging it like that and naming it, because I think, at least for me, joy was definitely not the default as I was raised. And so rewiring all my systems, you have a mental system, which is all your thoughts, you have your emotional system, but you also have your physical body too. My physical body was wired to just chaos. And so one of the first things that actually my divorce counselor said years ago is like, we're going to work on rewiring you back into a state of just talk about peace and calm and let that be the default. But it was so foreign to just my whole state of body. I noticed when things were too calm, I would create something,
Yeah.
right? So often, right, if we're feeling so much joy, and I've noticed this before in my own life, I'm feeling so happy and so joyful. It's like, oh, this doesn't feel safe or right. And so I might create, I've done this. I've picked a fight with
Same.
people.
Same.
I speak from experience.
Let's mess this up.
Exactly. This is too much joy. And I'm not thinking that
No,
obviously,
I
but
know.
part of me is like, wait a second, this is not our default. And so you're right. We have to baby step into it in terms of like, let's just like take a little, if you're using the yoga analogy, just a little bit more of a stretch. So if you can reach for your toes past your knees, just what would it be like to just reach just a little bit further, not try to go all the way or do something beyond, but just those little gestures as a daily practice. This is my work in terms of how do you create everyday enchantment. It
Yeah.
isn't these sweeping things, it's these little practices. And then getting really curious when we run into obstacles. Does it mean we're doing it wrong or we're not normal. Like you said, I love that. It's like, no, this doesn't mean that, hey, you suck at joy.
Yeah.
Give it up. This just means, hey, this is something new. And you're just like a child would be learning to walk. They don't stumble and you go, well, you messed that all up. So
Yeah.
I guess walking's out for you. It's you get back up and you try it again, you experiment and you play around with it. I love this because it makes it so much easier than trying to think we have to get it right or go from like one place 180 degrees to another place.
I just think that's so true because as you were talking, I just think, our culture doesn't really encourage this, right? We look on social media and everybody else is happy. We're not happy. Everybody else having these highlights, and
Absolutely.
it's all very extreme, so sometimes these subtleties of joy, that 3%, like you said,
Mm.
is just like, can we allow that? And then so many people I've talked to, like whether they're pulling the cards or whatever their mindfulness practice is, like it's
Mhm.
also not always transactional. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Mm.
do something and immediately I feel better. Like we often want this instant gratification, but if we're like just doing it consistently, you always use the term showing up, like
Yep.
mindfully showing up. Sometimes we're surprised by it because at some point down the road, we're like, wow, like I'm really happy, or I handled that situation a lot differently than I would have previously. And it's sort of like, so cliche, right? But like, it's like working a muscle, but like that muscle just
Absolutely.
gets stronger. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, like it becomes a way of being. But this also allowing you to feel joy can feel super awkward at first if you're
Mhm.
not used to it or depending on the trauma that you've had. So you really have to be kind and compassionate and curious and maybe also have a sense of humor about it, right?
Mm.
Like just like lighten up a little bit. Just
Absolutely. Like,
it
don't take joy so serious that
right?
it
Like, it
becomes
also
this
doesn't have to be
project.
so spiritual and all this stuff, like,
True. It's so
like
true.
a silly text or like,
Yep.
I
Yeah.
don't know, putting
I don't
sprinkles
know.
on your ice cream, like
Absolutely. And I think about this all the time, but summer to me, people feel a lot of pressure, right? They feel pressure to create these happy moments for themselves or their family. And there to me, I just threw a big event. There is a
yeah,
lot of pressure. And how do we then kind of, to your point, take ourselves less serious and find the joy in the moments? I do agree with you that a daily practice. You're not just doing it for today. Everything you put in then helps you 5 months from now, 5 years from now. You just create all these little small adjustments put you on a different path. And I think especially when we are thinking about summer or big vacation, whatever big thing that might show up in summer, and that's where we're putting all our joy eggs in that basket. I think you and I are saying, "Hey, that's wonderful. Hey, go on a vacation, have a great time." But you don't have to just wait until something like that to really experience, and I loved how you said it, Adrienne, the nuances, the subtleties, I thought this, the 3% of joy. I
yeah,
feel like this could be a hashtag or something
yeah,
because that to me is what makes a difference. Already this morning, I went out, I saw a baby deer, a couple days old. I found a quarter on the sidewalk. I had all these little small, almost like breadcrumbs, as I would also say,
yeah.
of enchantment, of joy. Those are the things that weave together to make our lives. They're not necessarily always these big things that we think are going to somehow change us. They're kind of sprinkled in, but what is your daily kind of grounded, anchored practice? And that to me that's where the magic's at, in my opinion.
I think so too. And we know how to feel it. And like, why would we? There's this great quote by Emily Dickinson, like, forever is made of nows. And I just love it because, it's like all these little things that make a joyful life. Or like when you're describing like the big event or the big holiday, we always think of like the main attraction. But,
Absolutely.
is there, I know sometimes it's stressful, but like, can there be joy in the planning, and in connecting and list making. And I don't know, do you stop for a
All
nice
the things.
coffee while you're grocery shopping? Like, can you also just notice when you're really sometimes things are stressful and things are last minute. We're down to the wire. Like, we're not disputing that, but like creating, I don't know, like a little joy
I
in there so we can
with you.
enjoy all of it.
I'm with you. And you know, it was funny because while I was kind of in that and I wanted to be more intentional about joy, right? While I was throwing this big event and I was getting stressed, I was like, okay, I don't have to do any of this. I am choosing, I get to do this. I get to do all the shopping and prepping and planning because I'm so excited, right, about all the little details. So I had to kind of break it down for myself
Yeah.
because, and I also had to recognize patterns in my own life, right, that do want me to be all stressed. Like, I think that default of being stressed and being busy and being burnt out, I mean, you and I both come out of corporate world. That is like, you get indoctrinated into that. It's like one project after one thing after next. Anybody that is in that world probably knows that energy we're speaking of. And so it's a big deal to break it in each moment. It might still show up the rest of our lives, that natural inclination.
Does for me, that's for sure.
Hey, I was there last week and just get to remind myself, right? There's this, to your point, there's this pause. And that's why I love the cards too, because the cards ask us to take a pause. And that to me, when we slow down a little bit, that's where we get insight and wisdom, and we don't just get on this hamster wheel, like you said, of going, 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 which again, the world encourages us to do. We take back control over, ooh, how do I actually want my day to go? How do I want to feel today? Those kinds of things. And I can't speak to that enough.
I agree with you. And I think it just the cards or whatever, they're just a tool, right?
Yep.
Whatever tool you use. It's also like when we pull that peace one, then if I think today, at different points, I'm driving somewhere, I'm doing something, like, is there peace in this moment? Where could there be more peace in this moment? How could I create it? Like, I wouldn't be thinking about that otherwise.
No, I agree. And I
I
love,
just be on my
yeah,
from point A to point
going.
B, on to the next thing. And it just, I think, breaks us out of those
Mhm.
cycles. Like, if you're every day, back to the forever is made of nows, if you're just on this cycle and never break it,
Yeah.
never make time for peace, never make time for joy, you're never going to experience it.
Yeah. And I think, tell me what you think, because it kind of goes back to the obstacle part you were talking about. If you don't know what that is because you've been so busy, which I definitely have encountered, that's like, what is actually going to excite me? Sometimes it's just creating some space. I always say boredom is kind of is another breadcrumb to joy, because when you're bored, which most of us don't like to be bored, and goodness, I just feel like we are the antithesis of a society that encourages boredom, right? You're bored,
Yeah.
here's
Oh,
a
yeah.
video game, here's a iPad to watch, or a game, or social media, like which we constantly can fill the boredom. But I actually think the boredom can help us discover the joy and those pieces. So letting yourself have open space where maybe you don't really know, you're just kind of flailing or meandering or whatever it looks like. I like, you're not going to probably find it if everything from the time you wake up in the morning till the time you close your eyes and put your head on a pillow is crammed with something outside of yourself.
True.
So tell me what do you think is, so we talked about two of the obstacles. Is there anything else that people come to you and say, Adrienne, how, I'm struggling with this, or I'm having a difficult time with really incorporating this. Is there anything else we didn't touch on?
Well, and just to like recap those, like the one is, yeah, like not knowing what brings you joy
No.
and feeling it. And then you also touched on it. Like, another one that kind of goes in with that is like delaying it, right? Like, I'll be happy,
Ooh, when?
when I have that relationship, that job, that
Mhm.
much money, etc. We kind of touched on that. And then the thing that really feeds into all of it is like worthiness. Some people are like, it's just not for
Yeah.
me, or I didn't earn it, or I didn't deserve it, or if it's for other people. And I mean, that's a loaded one, right? Like, they need
Oh,
a coach
totally.
with you to help them. But it's like, joy is inside all of us,
Mhm.
just like anger, resentment,
Mhm.
sadness. So it's, just like I can tell you you're worth it, but
Yeah.
there has to be some kind of practice to start to believe it. And that could be even 0.3%, right? Like just
Oh,
like
totally. And
really, but just like
well,
I
and I
all these lessons and everything that goes on in the world, like we are ultimately meant to go towards peace and joy,
Mhm.
like they're to help us get there. We're not meant to stay stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think sometimes when we're not willing to feel, that's kind of where we get stuck. At least that's been my experience and my clients' experience. And this worthiness I know is a big enoughness, worthiness. It's like I think it's almost everybody, I don't know anybody on the planet who hasn't experienced that feeling. And it's just that process of unlinking whatever we do, right, to this idea that absolutely is our birthright to be able to experience, to me, the whole human experience, which I always distinguish. And I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind tomorrow, but to me, joy encompasses everything. So all the feelings, just being authentically true in integrity in life, there's joy. Joy can also mean you lose something, you cry, you're sad, you're feeling the pain of that. You're not suffering. Suffering is like the whole other little kind of detour that the brain takes. But I know so often, again, when we are committed to that, then again, everything is allowed, which is another big thing, which I
Yeah.
think for a lot of us, we're afraid to allow things. Um, we feel like we have to control, which is a whole nother thing, which I think controlling a lot of times steals us of joy and happiness in a moment because we're so worried about how something's supposed to be and attached to how whatever the plan. I am a recovering planner and controller and you name it.
Yeah.
The more we just kind of, you and I talk about this all the time. We just kind of relax into, I always think again, like flow, and flow for me, sometimes I'm not flowing, but that actually invites these spaces for us to experience, again, whatever enchantment wants to show up with us in a moment, like a baby deer or whatever is coming our way on
Yeah.
a particular morning or day.
I love I love all of that. It's so spot on. And I think the other like kind of sister to that
Mhm.
is like if I'm really happy and
Mm.
am I joyful, maybe there's this feeling that I'm not compassionate to others suffering. Do you know what I mean? Like people like to also make
Yeah.
this disconnection of like, I think when we're truly joyful, we're on like to your point, honoring all that is. And there's a part the Dalai Lama has his book of joy. And so he says it much more eloquently than I'm about to, but spread the word, right?
Okay. Do
It's
it.
just, like if I jump down in the mud pit with you to like
Mm.
wallow in the suffering, that's not helping either of us. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if I've come to a place of like being able to process anger and resentment, and then the undercurrent is joy, I can bring my hand down to help
Mhm.
you out, So I think
Absolutely.
we often feel the honorable martyr thing to do is jump in the mud.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you're right. And how can I be happy if there's suffering in the world? To me, because I'm all about the and, it's like there isn't this either or, although we've kind of the world has set it up that way. There isn't. There is the joy of a smile and a sunset and the pain of, children being killed in a classroom. I mean, these are all the things that we're navigating, walking through in our lives on any particular day. And to say, well, I cannot be happy or feel this because of this, to me, it's always like, how do we put kind of some seemingly incongruent things together and
Yeah.
hold them all together? And one doesn't have to be, over the other. I love how you quoted the Dalai Lama on that.
Absolutely. And like for situations like the one you're referring to, and I've had many personal situations in my own life where like this, I am always trying to align with joy. And I ask myself, where is the joy in this
Mm.
situation? And sometimes there's no immediate answer. Do you know, like, and it's
Yeah,
not like
no, that's the truth.
joy there, but I'm
Absolutely.
curious, like, if this is my work and this is what I'm pursuing, like sometimes just asking the question
Mhm.
cracks something open, but we don't have to have all the answers. Or sometimes there's not joy right away, but how are we going to realign with it? Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? How are we going to support these families? How are we going to support kids? How are we going to change legislation? How are we going to like navigate towards
absolutely.
a more peaceful, joyful state? So sometimes these events, whether they're personal or on a more global scale, are catalysts for us to like ask these questions. And again, it's not blindly ignoring things and like, we're just going to be happy, but
No,
it's
no,
like,
no, I'm
where
not
is the
that.
true caring and wellness here? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
where is a
yeah.
really better society?
And I believe, and I think you believe this, but I won't put words in your mouth. I mean, we're on the cusp, we're in this like transition of spiritual evolution on this planet. And so we're in a lot of, when you're in transformation, it's very messy and bumpy. And so we have to be in the reality of all of what is around us and what we're personally experiencing. And also, I believe so many of us are here to help change the planet instead of defaulting always to fear and scarcity and all of these emotions that again take us away from this natural right. We don't have to do anything to feel this joy. Like, how do we all change the planet, rewire ourselves and hopefully the whole planet in the process? Again, it's not an overnight thing. It's not going to is that going to be resolved immediately? But that question you just asked, like, where's the joy in this? Or just what, to me, I always ask, like, what is really going on for me right now in this moment? Because the more honest I am, even without the answers or knowing, to me, again, there's a place where we create space instead of trying to fill in the discomfort and trying to fill in the unknowing or try to control or plan something. Like, those are all mechanisms I think that take us 3% away from joy, 3% away from being on these places. And again, we come by them honest. We learn them, they're reinforced all the time.
Sometimes
It's
they're easier too, you
well,
know,
yeah,
like
well, amen
just
to that. Yes, absolutely. And there are times where I'm like, I know I'm trying to control this because there's something under here. I
yeah,
don't.
or why wouldn't we want to numb this world out? Like sometimes I'm like, I totally know why I went there because this
Exactly.
stinks.
Exactly. I do say, and I don't know if I've said it yet on the podcast, but I was like, always think of like, and maybe again, this is just my way of looking at the world. Like, our souls are like, we're at the soul travel agent. See, and they're showing us different planets and different, lives and realms and what have you. And they're showing us Earth. And I was like, if we wanted just to be in homeo, like just like a complete, just that happiness, right? That we think we all are just, a lot of us are trying to just be happy all the time. I was like, then we should have picked a different plan.
Totally. Well, our mutual friend Jackie always says like she thinks she must have been in the bathroom and her friend just like signed her up to go to Earth because she's
Do
like,
it.
I never would have signed up for this like craziness.
Exactly. So again, our work is, and it can be playful and fun, and we can be with the serious things, and we can also make the space again, because the more we do that, I also think just vibrationally we help support the planet. It's like oxygen, right? And we're like rebuilding the ozone with joy around this planet, where we can say, okay, we can lean in and we can create these practices. And the more we all 3% it, I love this now. The more
Yeah.
we all 3% it, like, just think if the whole planet was like 7 billion people, just 3%ed it, what could happen and how we could, again, just create these shifts that,
Yeah.
you know, it's like reversing global warming and change and all. It's like, right, these small little things that over time, that's to me the same thing. It's like, ooh, yeah.
I totally agree. It's like all of these very simple, mindful choices. And that's the other thing I would add, because it kind of goes back to that, like that it's not always transactional, is
Mhm.
just like all of these like simple, mindful choices that you're making all the time
Yeah.
really have a cumulative effect, you
Yeah.
know? So like not to and sometimes that's like with the
Yeah.
cards too. People are like, they're so simple. And I'm like, they are. And I'd like you to tell me what happens when you actually do it.
Yeah.
Do you know
Right.
what I
Don't
mean? Like,
underestimate.
it is simple,
Yeah,
then just do it
absolutely.
and
I'm
let
with
me
you.
know how it goes because and it's again, I'm not they don't have to have the cart, whatever it is, but these
Absolutely.
simple
Whatever they're doing. Yeah.
make a
Whatever.
big difference. So like
Yeah.
do it.
Do it. Do it. So we're here
Do
to
it.
say, do it. Take a little 3% stretch
Yeah.
today, tomorrow. If they want to get a deck of your cards, they want to
Yeah.
learn more about you or just follow you because you do card pulls all the time. So here's the even easier thing. If you
Yeah.
want,
I'll
get
do it for
on
you.
get on Instagram, right? And follow Adrienne because she's doing beautiful card pulls all the time. And so are
Right.
other people and getting tagged and all of that. So tell the viewers and the listeners where would be the best place to get connected.
To buy the cards, they're on
Yep.
my website. So it's mayyouknowjoy.com and
Sure.
Instagram at mayyouknowjoy, Facebook, TikTok,
Mm.
wherever. We're just always
Yeah. May you
pulling
know
the
joy. That's all
cards.
you need to remember.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other part with any like intention or card pull, you know, it's just an opportunity, right? Like, so peace, like, where could I find more? It doesn't mean you're not peaceful. It doesn't mean peace is absent or there's any sense of lack. It's just, we can always look for more peace or more joy.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing. It's like we get, oh, I've had enough today or whatever. No, you can always just, again, wherever you are, wherever your baseline is, then just do a little stretch. And then as that becomes your new baseline, then just, again, and that's the awareness piece. That's the place where you're making the space to check in, you're noticing, you're asking the questions, you're being mindfully curious. And again, no perfection here. It's all a practice. And it's all, anytime you feel like you're getting a little bit about anything, just add a dose of compassion in there.
Totally, because maybe in a moment you don't feel peace.
Yeah.
And there isn't something peaceful around you, you know? So just noticing and what does like not peace feel
Yeah.
like in my body? That's also going to help you know when you find it, you know? So it's not always just like,
No.
ta-da.
Nope, it's not. And that is joy, simplicity, enchantment, all wrapped up in a little beautiful look. We're in the threes right now. We're at 33 minutes. So I feel like that 3% is just following us in the most
Perfect.
beautiful way. Adrienne, thank you so much for
My
being on the
pleasure.
podcast. I have a feeling you're going to have to come back and we're going to have to go into another conversation about all these things because it's juicy and relevant. And it just, again, it feeds and fuels me when I listen and am inspired by the ideas and the things that you suggest. So thank you, thank you,
Thank
thank you.
you.
And we will talk to everybody soon on the next episode, on the flip side, all the things. That's it for now, loves. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. Get all the juicy details and links we've mentioned in the show notes. If learning more about how you can use your own enchantment to live a oh hell yes life, come get your own coaching session with me by going to staceyandon.com and signing up for my homepage. And as always, come chat with me about this topic and all things enchantment in my Facebook group, Everyday Enchantment. See you on the flip side.